What's going on, people? So, got some shoes in the other day. Actually bought these from a store, right? So that's why this bag is out here. Also had a receipt in here so I remember how much these things cost, right? Let's see, that is $159 after a little bit of taxes. It was $150 just, if you don't happen to have to pay taxes, which is a thing in some places, right? So down there on the side of the box, you can kind of see what we're talking about here, or at least what I'm talking about, what you may or may not be listening to. I don't know. And so we're just going to jump on into this. Shouldn't take too long, I don't think. This right here, in case you don't know, the Nike Vomero 18 in light silver, barely volt, and Dusty Olive. Yeah, a lot of stuff going on there, right? We're going to start with the bottom because I like doing that. Down there, what are you looking at across there? Not a whole lot going on, but supposedly like these black parts or whatever are supposed to be like extra good for durability and grip and all that good stuff. So they got that going on. Otherwise, I mean, I do like the color selection, so there is that going there. And now moving on past that real quick here, looking up at the midsole and all that stuff, right? It's a little deceiving, we'll get into that in a second, but I do like the gradient that they have going on. This sort of light green to this darker green, sandwich down in there in between the gray and all that. It's just kind of a cool look, right? And real quick, in case you're curious about the interior side, yeah, it's basically the same thing, just without the big ZoomX branding, right? Which brings me kind of to my next point here, right? So you would think, just based off of how this looks, that like this big thing is like ZoomX or whatever, but that's not the case. As is often how some of these things work, when you look on the back, like they do often label the foams that are being used, So in this one, if you look down in there, it says like ZoomX at the top, ReactX at the bottom. So if you look at this gray piece at the top, that's kind of where the upper layer is. And this bottom layer, the ReactX, is all this. They just have the labeling on there. So it's kind of weird in a way, but just in case you were curious about that, that's what's going on down there. Anyway, so a couple other pictures and whatnot real quick, just so you can kind of start wrapping your mind around how this thing looks, make your own little opinions and whatnot. I mean, I share my opinion throughout this video, but I highly suggest that you leave with your own, because it's just that much easier for you, right? So that's just the thing that I like to throw out there, whatever, But at the end of the day, hey, do whatever you want to do. Whatever makes sense to you, take it, run with it, right? So anyways, let's move on and talk about these just a little bit, get you some close-up shots and whatnot, right? Down here around the toe box, you got some nice mesh. It feels really good, I will say that. And then that kind of just overall makes up the whole rest of the upper, right? The only difference being in some areas you do have these little green lines and whatnot, so that's going to be a thing that you'll see here and there, right? From the front all the way to the back. But then mainly on the middle side here, obviously you're going to have this big Nike swoosh because they're big on the branding. And I get it, you want people to know what your shoes are when they're out there in the world. So that's a thing. Also, real quick, on the subject of branding and whatnot, right? Back to the front piece here, right? So you got this little Nike running thing, which I thought was going to be like some sort of 3M situation, because it just kind of had that sort of vibe to it. It's not. It's much like the side with the ZoomX thing, just a little bit deceiving. Whatever though. Let's go back over to the back side here. So, one thing that I'm not a huge fan of on the heel area, you got this felt stuff going on, which I just feel like it's just going to get like really dirty really fast. So I don't know. I could be wrong, right? I tend to avoid a lot of dirty situations, so I tend to not get my shoes too messed up. But I just feel like this is one of them where it might get a little weird down there. Otherwise, just a little pull tab thing and a little Nike swoosh, typical stuff that you see on the back of most shoes. Switching over to the front here, laces wise, typical lacing system I've seen on a lot of things lately. It's simple, but it gets the job done, so no complaints about that. The laces themselves, as you may have guessed, pretty much just plain gray, nothing fancy about it whatsoever. Going on behind that, you got a really nice from the top to the bottom plush tongue, so that's kind of nice, like at least for like walking around and stuff, and it still doesn't even make these feel bulky. Sometimes I don't like the thick tongues because it can feel a little bulky when you're wearing it. These, it wasn't really a factor. But yeah, so at the bottom you got the mesh, at the top you got more of this like, I don't know what this is. It's sort of like a nylon sort of feel in a way, almost just because it's really smooth, with the Vomero 18 branding, right? So that's going to be that. And like I said, on the inside still, with the whole plushness thing, feels the same as it did on the outside, just a slightly different color. Barely. Anyway, so while we're on the inside, I guess the rest of the sock liner kind of has that same sort of thing. Very soft, very plush. Big fan of that. And then as we get on down onto the inside for the insole, right, this one says Vomero, maximum cushioning, while the other one just says Road, right? And so while I'm thinking about that, I'll bring up one little point here, the whole max cushioning thing. So like I said before, the Vomero, not the Vomero, the Invincible 3, right? They didn't make an Invincible 4, they instead replaced it with the Vomero 18, right? That's what the Nike lady told me they were going to do, and then that's exactly what happened, right? So they have like these 3 tiers nowadays, right? So they got the maximum cushioning type things, which is where these come in. Then they have for just everyday runs where like the Pegasus comes in, and then there's the structure for like stability, right? I guess it's like the air structure. I'm not sure. I haven't really seen those, or maybe I have and I just paid zero attention. But they have those for like support, right? So that's what's going on as far as like their little 3 tiers. I think Dell did a similar thing recently, right? But anyway, so moving on past that, just throwing that out there real quick for you. I'm gonna jump on into some, actually, before I get into these personal thoughts, I guess since I'm talking about different shoes, I'll bring in something else. And for one thing, these over here, these Brooks Ghost Max 2s, right? Yeah, Ghost Max 2s. When I sat down, I didn't really intend this to be like a comparison video, but these happen to cost the same price and be made for the same sort of things, which is like cushioned running. Kind of crazy. I just got these out together when I was doing the review schedule, like the recording schedule, because they're both green, and I got a St. Patrick's Day run coming up. But yeah, they're actually quite similar in functionality. But the thing is, when these were being brought out, right, the whole thing was that they were going to have like the maximum cushioning, right? So this being a 46 millimeter heel height, right? Which is, it looks like it's about the same as the Invincible 3, which is 40 if I recall correctly. But it's not, obviously. And it also looks like it's not as high as this, which is actually smaller. This is 45 on the Brooks Glycerin Max, which I am a big fan of these. Like, yeah, these have been working out great. But yeah, kind of weird how they do that. So the point being there, I like when things are comfortable and that's cool, and like the max cushioning, I don't really need it because I'm not like a huge guy. But if they're going to be throwing that around out there, I do like when people make it cushiony but not look so big and bulbous like those Glycerin Maxes. So just a little thing that I'm slipping in there. Okay, so personal thoughts. All right, let's go ahead and knock that thing out. I saw the Vomero 18 coming around. Like I said, I got the little tip from the lady that they were replacing something that I was cool with. So I thought, you know, this could be all right if they make some decent colors. And they didn't make a whole lot of colors that I wanted. This was the clear winner, right? So I went, saw it in the store, and I liked them, you know, because they looked exactly like they did on the pictures and stuff. There was supposed to be a demo run with these the next day after I saw them, but the demo run did happen. It just rained, so for me, it didn't happen because I don't run in the rain. So I just bought them anyway, and I'll be figuring out how they actually work later tonight. But just off the surface, right? Having these things in hand, liking at them and all that stuff. Yeah, I like a lot of things that are going on here as far as the visual. It's just kind of cool. Like the color selection here, like worked out exactly how I thought it would. So far, I'm a huge fan of these. And even walking around in them, I'll just tell you now, that is fine. So even if they're not a great running shoe, which I'm sure they will be, they're at least still going to have a nice place in the lineup. So yeah, things are looking good with the Vomero 18s, right? And I'm sure once summer rolls around, they'll throw out all kinds of other colors. All right, let's talk about some sizing and stuff, because that's kind of important, I suppose, right? I bought these true to size because that's a thing that I often do, right? And it worked out just fine for me. So that's very cool, right? Which means 9.5. I have a size 9.5 foot, 9.5 size shoe. Just kind of works together a lot of the time. I will say this though, under the foot, just walking around, they are very, you definitely notice that little bounce in the back area, right? And because of the extra height, it feels a little weird walking in them because it's like your foot is hitting the ground sooner than you might expect it to. So not a bad thing, you know. I get that's what a lot of people want, so that's cool and all, sure. But past that though, when I was looking at the walking around in the Ghost Max 2s, which are the other ones I have out here, those under the foot felt better. I mean, these have like was it a 10 millimeter drop? The Ghosts are 6. They're also like lower and just more stable, right? So under the foot cushioning, right? All I'm saying is, like, to me, it's a little bouncier than I would like it to be when I'm walking around, but I don't think that's going to be a deal breaker for a lot of people. If anything, that's going to pull a lot of people in. So I get that, right? Now, as far as the upper goes and stuff, the upper feels really good. It's a lot of people say that like Nikes tend to run a little narrow for them, and I get that. But of the two that I'm talking about here today, this one actually feels a little bit wider. The overall mesh also feels a little bit better. It's kind of like a nitpicking sort of thing as far as that better feel goes, but if I had to call it and say one is better, I'd lean towards this one, though they're both like pretty nice. So there is that. And like I was saying earlier, like this is all around comfort feeling. Even down to the tongue, it doesn't feel bulky or anything like that. So I'm a big fan of what they all have going on here. So once I get these out tonight, I'll share some sort of thoughts on that later. But all in all, again, like I said moments ago, Vomero 18 looking pretty promising over here. So big fan of that, because who wants to waste money, right? Especially when it's like $159. That's a fair amount. You know what I'm saying? Could have bought another box of Marvel Masterpiece XLs, hobby boxes, or the Platinums. Either one. Either way. So that's going to be that, right? That's everything? I feel like that's everything. So yeah, again, I know I'm wearing this shirt. I'm not like affiliated with a store in any kind of way. It's just that there's some good people working in a pretty nice store. I like when I go there. And because it's a local store, I try to support that whenever I can. I do not really like paying like the extra money sometimes. Like, like when there's like discounts online and various other outlets or whatever. But I do like having the option to buy stuff around here, so you just kind of go with it. You know what I'm saying? It's a thing that some people do. I'm one of those people. There we go. From me to you. Have a nice rest of your day or rest of your night, whatever it is, wherever you are. I'll be back in a minute with another review. Well, I guess you won't be seeing. I don't know what order you're going to see these in. Later, people.